be able to stay in control this November? Well, Tuesday's primary elections brought some smiles, brought some frowns to people, and maybe changing the conversation as we head into the election. Joining me on the record is Reverend Al Sharpton, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation. Hey, Rev, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Absolutely. Let's start in your turf, in your backyard, right? New York, where we see Mark Molinaro losing to Pat Ryan in this special election. And it was a surprising upset, but the thing is, what really is changing the conversation is that it was the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade that kind of brought this victory. So what does that mean? Were you surprised with this election?
When you look at the fact that you have this really surprising vote in Kansas against Roe versus Wade, against them having a state law banning abortion. Now you have Molinaro losing in New York. It seems that the indications are that the Supreme Court decision has probably helped to politically mobilize a backlash among those that are pro-choice. And because you can't discount, when you asked me, am I surprised about Molinaro losing, I was surprised. And I was even more surprised on the Kansas vote. Kansas is one of the most conservative states in the country. So if you see a surprise congressional special election loss in New York and a red state like Kansas, both uphold the results of a decision changing Roe versus Wade, you have to conclude this is going to be a motivating factor in November.
It really is, especially now that everybody's looking at it. Since then, we've had 4 special elections, and even though Democrats haven't won all of them, we're seeing that what they thought would maybe a rising tide with Republicans, things begin to shift in the Democratic favor. So, when we talk about the effects of Roe versus Wade, this national conversation, is this the message now that Democrats need to go forward with?
I think that it's among the things they must go forward with. I think that clearly they must deal with Roe versus Wade, but they still must deal with voting rights. And I think that that's a critical issue, not only in the Black community, but across all lines, and particularly when you have an active investigation around trying to change the vote in Georgia. And you've got people from Graham all the way to Rudy Giuliani having to go in front of a grand jury. So I think that voting has got to be a real issue. Criminal justice. When you look at the fact that we have had any number of cases from George Floyd to Breonna Taylor, and now you have a Latino boy beaten on video by police unprovoked. So I think all of these, if I were advising the National Democrats, and I'm not, they need to have all of these issues out front, because these are the concerns of people every day, including inflation. They should not get tied to one issue rather than the other. Now, I think that Biden has been able to be helped by the fact gas prices are going down. He was able to get his Inflation Reduction Act through, which is a big deal. They need to emphasize that. I think the Democrats have had a messaging problem. They've not been able to tell everybody in their living room why Inflation Reduction Act, what it means to you. Putting a cap on insulin is a big deal in the Black community. We are over-indexed in diabetes. It's a big deal. Having a ceiling on prescription drugs, period, is a big deal. Dealing with the fact that there's been a disproportionate emphasis on how they're going to deal with these toxic waste dumps, which are disproportionate in our community, is a big deal. But it's almost like they want people to know what they're not telling them. And I think if they drove all of that, like the women activists have driven right to choose, they could upset this historic trend where the party of a sitting president usually does that at the midterm election.
And perhaps even change their language when it comes to climate change and the effects in the Black community. I heard a great interview with an activist that said sometimes when we hear that word in Black community, sometimes we say, oh, tree huggers, right? But when we talk about climate change, like you said before, you get into why is asthma so high in Black communities.
That's right.
You talk about where we live, polluted areas, how that affects us. You talk about lead when it comes to the pipes. You can tie that to a Freddie Gray, So that conversation even has some nuances that I feel sometimes we don't hear them taking the climate change message in that way, especially because Black folks, we are agriculturalists at heart, right?
Absolutely.
We are part of this land.
Right. We are that by heart, and many of us that if we've not had to deal with it firsthand are the children of those that did. So we were raised in that environment. So we understand that. You've got to speak our language in order to deal with our coming out to vote. I often say you have to turn people on so you can turn them out.
Come on, absolutely. Let's go to Florida. When we look at the race now, we have Val Demings, who will face Marco Rubio in the Senate race. That would be historic in and of itself, having this Black woman if she were to win this seat. But the fact that she is outraising Rubio, even in his own backyard, is something to talk about. Now, he has been trying to align her with low ratings by Biden. She's been pushing back in a major way, going over his record of what he does not do. How does she need to lean in, and what do you think we'll see out of that race? Because Florida's
I think Val Demings gives a particular problem to the Republicans. Because one of the things that they're trying to run on is the whole idea that the Democrats defund the police. Well, she was the police chief of Orlando, Florida, so they can't do that. I was in.
They have a good record.
Yeah, a good record as a police chief. She wasn't just a police. She was a police chief, so they can't hit her with that. And she served in Congress, still served. Did well. They cannot say she doesn't know what to do. I think Val Demings has a real good chance. She's up 4 points ahead of Rubio in the poll. And if she can hold that poll and turnout, the key is going to be turnout. And if she can get turnout, I think she can upset this and become the first Black woman governor in the country. And I think when we look at the landscape, you have Val Demings running for governor in Florida. You have Wes Moore, who has a good shot, according to the poll, of winning for governor in Maryland, Black man. You have, of course, Stacey Abrams in Georgia. The polls has a little down, but it's going to be turnout. I think that we're looking at some Black governors this year. I think we're looking at some Black senators. I think Reverend Warnock will keep his seat. I think his greatest asset is that Herschel Walker keep talking. And if I was Reverend Warnock, I would send Herschel a microphone every day and keep talking.
I was just letting him talk.
And you got Ms. Beasley, Judge Beasley in North Carolina. We have a lot of statewide races, so we have a lot of reasons to come out and vote. But you've got to message, got to talk to the people, not talk at them. Don't be so policy wonkish that you miss the people.
That's important. Florida produced a lot. You got Charlie Crist now running against DeSantis, who has. It's funny we have Val Demings, right, on what she's running on, but then DeSantis has a strong hold in Florida, and he's running. He is for restrictions on abortion. He's come against Biden's immigration policy. He's for don't say gay. He has run strong on those issues that we're seeing Democrats run against and other issues. That's going to be an interesting matchup.
I think DeSantis is Donald Trump with good manners. And I think that the Chris being the candidate against him can be tricky for him. Because Chris used to be a Republican.
He did. He knows his point.
That's exactly. And he used to be governor. So it's going to be hard to demonize him as a radical because people in Florida know him. And I think that he needs to just bring the fight to DeSantis. Because DeSantis clearly has ambitions to run for president.
Yeah.
And if I'm Chris, I would hit him on the issues and hit him on that he's only using you as a stepping stone to run for president. He doesn't care about the people in Florida.
Last two questions I want to touch on. First, Liz Cheney. We've seen the work that she's doing with the January 6th committee. So now some have painted her as a hero. She lost her primary. But how should we view her as we go forward? Some are saying we may even see her later run for president. She says herself, possibly. But we have to look at her voting record as well. How do you see her?
Well, I think that we should look at the fact that 93% of the time Liz Cheney voted with Donald Trump. And she is a diehard conservative Republican. She's just not a Trump. I think that her voting record is something that we would be harmed by and something that we would disagree. On the other hand, because she's not a Trump, and because she would not get in line, I think the fact that she voted with Trump 93% of the time and said, but I'm not going to sacrifice what I believe in and what the country believes in, I think you have to give her even more credit for courage. Because if she was not who she was and stood by what she stood by, I would think that she would just showboat. She honestly took a courageous stand. I think that we ought to give her credit. That does not mean I would vote for president, because what she stands for is the absolute opposite of everything in our interest. So I think you can respect people that you don't like their politics.
Absolutely. That's why I repeat what you have been talking about recently. We need to have Election Day as a national holiday. There should be nothing stopping.
We should have Election Day off. People shouldn't have to go to work, shouldn't have to go to school. The NBA said they're not going to have games now on Election Day. We ought to, if the NBA can set a tone, certainly we should have a national election day.
I'm waiting for the NFL to speak out.
Yeah.
So,
I am too.
Now, you've been pushing for this summit, hate summit. This is
what I said was in Buffalo, after the massacre there at the top supermarket, 10 blacks killed by a white assailant who was openly on his own social media page the white supremacist. That we've seen now killings of Asians because they were Asian, Latinos because they were Latino, blacks over and over again, and culminating in Buffalo, and Jews. We've seen synagogues in Pittsburgh and in Southern California. So I said it's time for the president to come forward and set a tone that we will not tolerate hate-filled violence and bring all of us together, because all of us we may not agree on everything. So all of us need to deal with the fact that we are all under threat, and any of us under threat. So from Buffalo, I called and talked to the head of the Anti-Defamation League and head of LULAC, the Latino organization, and Asian. And we made this joint call with Mark Morial, president of the National Urban League. And I'm glad President Biden has now, after 2 months of our back and forward conversations with Susan Rice, Ambassador Rice, who is a senior staff member for the president, they've announced that they are going to have the summit at the White House on September 15th, and the president's going to speak. And I would hope out of that that we re-emphasize that the Justice Department is going to, in many ways, increase the budget and increase the investigation into these hate groups and these hate crimes. We don't need a photo op. We need some teeth that people need to understand. We will come after you, and we will put a microscope on these groups that are advocating killing people based on what they are.
Absolutely. Well, if it wasn't for people like me for that, we would not even arrive at this point. So thank you, Reverend Al. Reverend Al Sharpton, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation. Thank you so much for coming on the record, and I will see you next time.
All right, thank you.